Jon Quinton, a very, very warm welcome to 10Q interview. You may or may not know this. I think I probably have talked to you about this on LinkedIn over the years, maybe, but I am a big fan of Marketing Freaks, and I think I've been listening to it on off since you probably started, but I guess that leads us
That's
nicely
very kind.
I mean, I'm sure we'll cover this in the podcast, but it's rare that there's lots of podcasts out there, and I think yours has stood the test of time, whereas a lot, as I'm sure you're aware, fade away pretty quickly. But
Yeah, which I can understand why, and I guess we'll probably get into the pros and cons of podcasting, I guess. But yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's always really nice when you put something out to hear that someone likes it.
Do you know what? I read something on LinkedIn, funnily enough, last week, and it said something along the lines of, you should tell people that you appreciate their content. And as a content creator myself, it rang such a bell. I was like, oh my God, I don't ever do that. I listen to lots of podcasts. I read lots of blog posts and newsletters. I listen to watch lots of YouTube. And I was thinking that the person slogging away at the other end has absolutely zero idea that I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And if you extrapolate that out across 1,000 people, it's like, oh, think how good you could make that person feel.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if you're, I don't know, if you genuinely like creating content that will hopefully help someone, to hear that it's helped someone is always a nice, it's a nice positive, isn't it?
It is, man. It is. Well, let's start at the beginning. Why a podcast? How did you get started?
Why a podcast? So I'll try and we'll go back a little bit further, shall we? So before I got into the world of digital marketing, so I run an agency called Overdrive Digital.
Yep.
I've been working in the field of digital marketing for 17 years or so, right?
I'm similar, man. And it's someone asked me the other day how long I'd been doing it. I was like, blimey, that's a long time.
Yeah, I think you can get less for murder, can't you?
Yeah, probably.
So, been doing that for ages. But before I did that, I played guitar.
Okay.
And did that for a living for about 6 years, maybe. So earned my crust playing guitar, which was wicked.
I'm gonna have to pull at that thread, I'm afraid. What kind of guitar?
Well, lead guitar.
Okay. So in a band?
Yeah, in bands, teaching, however I could get any money, basically. Just would do anything guitar related for money. And did that for about 6 years. And always loved the recording process. Okay. So audio for me is just there's always been a love of it, and how do you get a guitar to sound great when you're recording it? How do you get a voice to sound good when you're recording some audio? So always loved that. And then got into the world of digital marketing, set up Overdrive Digital, and the way the podcast came around was so a guy I used to play in a band with back in the day. He'd gone on to a number of different projects. One of those was a band called Brother Strut, and he'd grown that band from nothing to selling out venues like Coco in London, which is 1,000 capacity.
Wow!
All through Facebook ads. So he'd grown the whole thing through Facebook ads, got it to a really good point. I was like, oh, that'd be a really interesting bit of content to talk to him about that. And it was didn't even think, let's start a podcast and that'll be the first episode. It was recorded this chat. It was really, really interesting. There was loads of really good advice in there for, I guess, growing a brand or a product from scratch using Facebook ads at that point in time.
And someone who'd actually done it as well, as opposed to...
Yeah, and really successfully.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, had done it, been there, done it with his own money. It got to the point where he was selling out venues like Coco, and he was the first person ever to phone up that venue and go, "Oh, can I book it out, please?" They're like, like without an agent or anyone. And he did it, and he sold it out, and it was amazing, really, really cool story. So I was like, okay, well, that would be a really good piece of content.
Is this episode still live up on somewhere? I can link to it in the show notes.
It's on Spotify. It's episode 001.
Okay, I will link to that below.
Thank you. Well,
And I will
it'd
listen
be
to it as
weird
well.
to
Do you know,
listen.
it's funny. I don't think I've listened to that one. That doesn't ring a
I
bell.
think it was I think it was recorded with like one microphone. But yeah, it was a good chat, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute, this could be a podcast.
And
So
when was this?
2019, I think. Like, it was a while
Okay.
ago.
Okay.
Like, it was quite a while ago. Um, and it just evolved from there, really. And then sporadically over time, I'd find someone willing to be interviewed. We'd talk through something related to digital marketing. And it was all quite haphazard and sporadic for a while.
Mm.
And we're now on, well, tomorrow will be episode 115. So it's changed and morphed and developed and gone through lots of different phases in that time. And I guess initially it probably didn't really take it seriously as a podcast. It was just an opportunity to meet interesting people,
Yeah.
have some interesting chats, and it felt like the most logical format to put that out in would be a podcast. And if anyone found it interesting, great. And if people didn't, so be it.
Yeah.
Um, but very much going back to that kind of original story, very much enjoy audio. So I just love the production element, and I love trying to make things sound better, and I just really enjoy that side of it. And that's probably why it's lasted, because it's something fun. Like, it's not just I'll do a podcast because I think doing a podcast would be a really good idea. It was
Yeah.
actually, I just enjoy doing it, and that always helps, doesn't it, when you want to do something for
100%.
not just fizzle out, because podcasts are like, the discoverability of a podcast is awful. By that I mean, compared to other content,
Yeah.
so like YouTube, for example, I
Has a
think it's
search
much easier.
functionality, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there
Yeah.
isn't one on it. What if you're just doing audio only anyway? Like, you're really limited. So if you put it on Spotify, unless you get featured, no one will find you. If you go on Apple Podcasts, unless you get into the top 10 within your category, no one will find you.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really limited to pushing it out to your own audience until it gets to a certain point. And that's probably why it fizzles out for a lot of people, because it's so difficult to get the
Yeah.
numbers up.
Do you know, I talk about this a lot, actually. It's funny you bring it up, because when you put out a podcast, and you'll know this as well as I do, right? You do all this hard work. You do the hard work getting the guest to sign up. You do the research. You then get the
Yeah.
guest on, then you then edit it. And I find you put it out to your audience, and if you've got not a great audience, then so be it. And particularly at the moment with organic reach, right? I mean, we can talk about how you may push yours later, but
Yeah.
because I know you do, I have seen it being pushed. But for many, if you haven't got a big audience and the organic reach is being throttled, only 3 people are seeing your LinkedIn post or your tweet or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you don't really talk about it again. And it's like you
I
put in
know.
all this effort. It goes out on a Tuesday morning for me, or whenever for everyone else. And then it's like, right, unless it gets that traction straight away and everyone says, oh, my God, that's amazing. And, and Jon Quinton shares it with his audience and everyone's like, oh, Jon, I loved it. It fizzles out so quickly. I've never seen anything like it. Like you, I've worked in digital marketing a long time, and it's the only medium you see this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably the hardest medium to put out.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. I think, well, in some respects, yes, and in some respects, no. I think on that point, but it is insanely difficult to get the numbers going and get any traction at all. And so I think if you're I don't know, if you're a business and you go, I know what the best format for us for our new marketing activity will be, a podcast. You probably wouldn't, unless you're fully
Elon Musk and you've
committed.
got a couple of million people following you on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. But there are certainly other formats that are easier to build traction on. But yeah, on that point of I mean, it is a lot of effort, isn't it, to coordinate an episode and do everything. But one of the things I love about the format is the amount of content you get from one episode. So
Yeah.
We'll sit here for an hour having a chat, and there'll be video, there'll be clips you can get out of that video for LinkedIn, there'll be the audio. From the audio, you can get a transcript, you can write a blog post around it. So I know there's more to it than just sitting here for an hour having a chat, but
This is something I'm not very good at, by the way, and it's a time thing, I think, more than anything. I don't know how you
yeah,
find it.
that is time intensive. And one of the things, that's changed recently within our business is 6 weeks ago we had a marketing manager join, called Sarah. Sarah's brilliant, and she's kind of taken over quite a lot of that work in
Right.
terms of I'll do an episode, and then actually prior to that, she'll write a brief for the episode. So there's not a script, because you don't want to script these things at all, but just key points and a bit of research and that type of stuff. So that's amazing. And then she'll handle the promotion aspect of it. So the output from each episode is dialing up massively,
Yeah.
and that's been brilliant. But without that additional resource, it's so difficult, because
Mm.
it's really hard, even just to pull out maybe 2 or 3 clips for LinkedIn. That
Yeah.
takes a lot of time.
Well, yes, it does, because you need to watch it and listen to it to actually find out the bit that's interesting
Yeah.
to highlight. I mean, you kind of segue nicely onto my next question, which was around ideation and brainstorming and research. And you kind of mentioned a little bit of Sarah does there, but how do you plan an episode?
Yeah, I think we've got various different types of episodes. I think
Yeah.
probably like yours, you've got different series, and um, broadly speaking, ours are split between interviews with guests. So that's one camp.
Yeah.
And then the second aspect of it is conversations or discussions with the team here at Overdrive. And that'll be usually some more strategic or tactical things around paid media.
Yeah.
So on that camp, it's much easier, because it's a conversation around, okay, what is it our potential customers or people within our sector will find useful,
Yeah.
right? So that could be anything from how to manage performance max campaigns, how to optimize your landing pages, how to manage your budgets, what questions to ask an agency in a pitch, whatever
Yeah.
it is. But it's content that will hopefully be useful for people who may at some point want to work with us, or are working in the industry and need some help.
Yeah.
The guest aspect is a bit different, because we're talking to people about their stories. So it's a case of really kind of sitting down and looking at, well, who would we want to have on? Who
Yeah.
can we get on? And then once we've booked in a guest, it's researching their background, trying to think. I think this is something I've got better at, is almost reverse engineering back from, once this episode's live, like, what's the most interesting thing about this guest from an episode point of view? What would a great teaser be? What would a great title be? And then planning the episode around that a little bit more.
Okay.
So rather than going, okay, here's a load of questions that I think I can ask this guest, that would all be really interesting. Sitting down, getting the episode, and then trying to work out what the interesting part of that is.
Yeah.
Almost going back from, well, actually, do you know what? So not this week's episode, but the one in 2 weeks' time is with the founder of a business that's globally well renowned for what they do. They've just hit the 25-year anniversary. So there was a conversation around the 25 years and everything else. But the big thing for me there was, right, as a founder who's gone through 25 years in business, what's the one thing at the front of your mind when you look at marketing
Yeah.
as a founder? It's like, right, build the episode around that theme, and then
Go on. Sorry. Go on.
That's all right. And I was just saying, then you can kind of go, well, I think that's probably the really interesting bit from a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
Like how's a founder view marketing? What do they want? What do they need? And then, well, they've just hit their 25-year anniversary. So how has that changed over 25 years? And right from day one through to now, like how has that changed? And really interesting conversation and loads of little nuggets out of it. But I find that as a planning exercise really useful.
What would be your teaser if I'd have planned my podcast like that? What would be my thing? What would I be
Oh,
asking you?
that's a really good question. It's
I mean,
weird being
how
on the
long's
other side of.
Overdrive been going for now?
Yeah, so we've been going for it'll be 7 years this autumn.
Okay, so that's the thing, right? That's. I mean, it's an intro. I hadn't really thought about it from that point of view. Actually, I quite like it. You've got my brain buzzing a bit because, like you, what I want is people to take away things from each podcast, whether it's lessons, guidance, advice, thought
Yeah,
provoking, excuse me, whatever. And I guess there are people, whether it's starting an agent or starting a business, I guess, and the fact that you're still in business 7 years later is, particularly in this day and age, is really a positive thing.
yeah.
And actually, maybe I should be angling mine more down that road. Out of the two types of episodes you mentioned, how do they perform against each other?
Um, it's a really good question. It's a little bit difficult to answer because,
It depends, right?
yeah, like I love vague answers.
It's a niche
I'm really
digital
sorry.
marketing gag, that one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it does depend. It defines success, and it's like purely numbers, right? If you look at pure numbers, it's usually the guests because they'll have an audience that's external to ours, and if we can tap into that, the reach is just naturally bigger, right? So, our top episode was, I think it's on about 14,000 views slash downloads,
Yeah,
and that was with a guy called Noel Phillips, who is a aviation YouTuber. And
I've watched that one. Yeah,
have you
yeah,
have you watched any of his content?
yeah. I did. I kind of,
It's
John. I go down absolute rabbit holes on YouTube. If you
okay.
ask my wife, some of the stuff I make her watch of an evening.
Yeah. So this guy is like, yeah, I'm sure if you've gone down that particular rabbit hole, it's quite it's quite nerdy, but it's quite entertaining stuff. So
Yeah,
he's done stuff like the video that really stepped things forwards for him was I guess it's almost like a human experiment of right. I'm going to get the world's longest flights back to back in economy and see how it feels. So he flew London to Perth, then Perth, New Zealand, then New Zealand to Doha, then Doha to London, all in one go in economy. Um, and like by the end, he just looked absolutely ruined. But he does all these really interesting challenges, and yeah. So I interviewed him, and again, going back from that,
how did that come about? Out of curiosity,
just asked him.
but how did you find out about him?
Oh, my brother! I think my brother sent me a link to one of his videos
Okay,
ages ago. So I've been watching his channel for a while and thought, okay, this would be interesting. But I was like, back to that point of, well, what's the actual interesting bit here from our podcast point of view? And it was the how does a man in his 40s leave a career in IT to go
yeah,
full time on YouTube, and what on earth does that look like?
yeah,
And he was really candid and open about his business and his business model, and how he kind of transitioned from a stable job in IT to doing YouTube full time and everything in between. And and I'm biased, but it was a genuinely good interview in
yeah.
terms of from as he is just him being completely open about his business, which is YouTube and content creation. Yeah, just asked him. And this is like so many. Have you got?
Someone's just hang on. Sorry.
We got an interruption.
Yeah. What the bloody hell was that? I've got no idea what
I
that
don't know
was.
what that was. It sounded interesting.
Oh, it was about a GoPro Hero 9 time lapse.
Okay.
Oh, that was a bit bizarre. Sorry.
That's all right. I like a random interruption like that. Well, when we did, actually, do you know what? When we did that episode, we recorded it in an aircraft hangar.
Yeah, you did. That's right. I remember. I was just thinking. I remember watching it, and you were saying about the business. I was like, I don't remember that bit. I was thinking, oh, have I got the wrong one here? But no, it was in an aircraft. I did watch it. I'm going to rewatch it actually.
And there were like planes firing up and taking off, and like just constantly interrupted. But it was brilliant fun. And I think like a lot of this stuff is weirdly, people are sometimes scared to get in touch with other people and ask them to do things.
Yes.
And you're like, do you know what? I enjoyed watching his content. I
You
thought it'd be
chatted to Robbie
interesting.
Knox.
Robbie Knox, yeah.
I just put Marketing Freaks into YouTube, so I'm trying to find that. Robbie
Yeah,
Knox. I don't know if people know who Robbie Knox is, but he's one of my favourite YouTubers.
his channel is amazing, isn't it?
His channel is incredible. Like,
it's really good.
He has nailed the niche of.
It's just like everyday.
He's everyday normal, not one of these YouTubers like, "Hey guys, do." He's just normal, and it's so refreshing to watch.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen that one. I'm going to watch that one as well.
That was quite a good one. But yeah, it's just. I mean, I'd say people ask me all the time, but maybe 2 people have asked me.
Pretend we're on LinkedIn. I always get asked.
Yeah, I get asked this question, aka one person has asked me this question, like how do you go about getting guests on? And it's like just ask them. It's like, and occasionally someone will say yes, and that's it. And if you don't ask, you don't get. And both Robbie and Noel, it was just a case of get in touch, and they were both happy to do it. The Robbie Knox one was really interesting. Like, he's obviously got a career in TV, right? From Soccer AM, and he is extremely good at putting a video together. Like, I think a lot of people who are, I don't know, who may not be familiar with what goes on in the background might watch his videos and go, "It's easy."
Yes,
it's a guy walking, but actually the guy knows how to construct a good video, and he knows what goes into that, and he is a talented man.
Yeah, I think that's the art, is when you put these videos out, when they put these videos out and you look at it and go, "Oh, that looks easy." That's when you know it's a good video, because idiots like me go, "Oh, that looks easy. I could probably do that." And then I start a YouTube channel. So I don't know if you know, I started a YouTube channel about a month ago. And my challenge is 100 videos in 100 days. And it's not easy. But like, you look at the likes of the Robbie Knoxes, who you think, "Oh, if they can do it, I can do it." And I'm playing it down a little bit here, but yeah, he is very, very good. Really, very good.
Yeah. But also, you start learning. And like, video for us is way, way, way subpar. And that's one of the points we're really trying to work on at the moment.
Yeah.
And there's loads of plans for that. Like, how do we get... I think the audio has always been relatively good for us anyway, but the video is like, how do we make this good from a video perspective? Because A, it's good to have good video, but B, that's where the discoverability comes from.
I mean, I said earlier in this podcast that podcasting was, I can't remember the phrase I used, something like podcasting is one of the hardest mediums out there. But it doesn't even compare to video. Video is a whole different ball game. Like, you and I, and this is a very interesting chat so far, but it's interesting if someone's sitting in their car driving a couple of hours or commuting, and they've got it on their podcast. Whereas if you ask someone to sit down and watch it of an evening and go, "Right, can you watch this hour and a half long chat?"
Yeah.
on a 2-camera thing. Oops, sorry, let me hit my mic. On a 2-camera thing can get very boring very quickly.
Can do. It can do. But I also think, like, if I look at how I consume podcasts, it's actually probably a bit random. Like, I do love the format as well. Like, I
Yeah,
absolutely love it. And of the podcasts that I listen to fairly regularly, often I'll listen to it while I'm driving.
yeah,
Because, you know, if you're on a long drive, sitting down for a good chunky podcast episode is like,
yeah.
I think it really helps the
Agreed.
monotony of driving down the motorway go a bit quicker. Or, like, if I've got the time, I prefer to watch it. I
Okay.
don't know why. So you think about podcasts like, what do I listen to? So like the big one, like the Diary of the CEO, probably everyone watches that from time to time.
Yeah.
Like, I'll watch that. I'll never
Have you
listen
watched
to
one
it.
from start to finish,
I've probably, I
or
usually
at least a good
skip the,
chunk?
yeah, I always skip the childhood bit. You know, what was it like growing up? I'm
Do
just,
you? Why is that?
it's boring.
Is it?
Yeah. Like, I'll skip to the, like the meaty bits, probably.
Okay.
But to genuinely watch most of it. I'll sit there and watch most of it. And then other podcasts, like one I don't know if you class it as a podcast really, but a YouTube channel that I'm properly into at the moment is Justin Hawkins Rides Again.
Okay.
So Justin Hawkins from The Darkness, um, really, really, really good YouTube channel, and
Okay.
he'll do episodes deconstructing songs or deconstructing certain artists, or he'll talk about, again, like proper candid open conversations about how you make money in the music industry, how that's changed, where his royalty income comes from and how that works. Really good detailed stuff, and he is an intelligent human being,
Okay.
and his content's great. And I guess it's a podcast, or what would you call a video? A,
I don't know. It's kind of there's a lot of
a
crossover. I mean, it's
vlogcast.
probably a documentary to a certain degree,
Pops,
but
yeah.
I guess the way people like it could be a podcast quite easily, right? You could. I'm sure I haven't seen it and I'm not familiar with it, but I'm sure if you had the audio only, it would be totally fine.
I was going to have a little look actually on Spotify because there must be an audio version of something that he does because it is very podcasty. But I've never. This is the point. I've never looked for it.
Okay.
I've always just watched it, so I think yeah, it is a podcast. It is. It is a podcast.
Justin
Yeah.
Hawkins.
But that's the first time I've considered looking for it as an audio version, whereas other podcasts I've always just listened to.
It's funny, like looking at it. See, I mean, it's a
I've got
lot
very
in the book.
bizarre, probably got very bizarre content consumption habits.
Yeah, I think that about me. But that's the beauty of the content world we live in. I was having this conversation literally 2 days ago. Like, I mean, you're a similar sort of age to me, I guess, maybe a bit younger. But when I
I
was
don't
a
know, how old
kid,
are you, Chris?
I'm 44.
39.
Yeah, I thought so. You had that youthful look compared to me. But I think I was talking about when I was a kid, there was 4 TV channels, and that was it. And that is showing
Yeah.
age. And then Channel 5 came along, and then Sky, and the rest of it.
Do you remember how exciting Channel 5 was?
Oh God, yeah. And
It's like,
it
oh my
wasn't
God,
great.
there's a fifth channel.
But now but you had the point of it was you had to watch if you were going to watch something, you had to watch what was scheduled at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, and you
Yeah.
had 5 options.
Yeah.
And unless you were interested in, I don't even know what it is, Doctor Who or You Bet or whatever, you just found yourself watching. Whereas now, this is why I'm such a huge fan of YouTube. Is you can find something you're interested in, right? You're obviously a fan of guitars, music. Justin Hawkins is right up your street. But
Yeah.
that
And it's
show of
right
his
there.
on YouTube would never appear on mainstream TV, probably. Maybe on
No,
now that days on Netflix or whatever. But
yeah. Well, it would never have been on terrestrial
No,
TV.
no, it wouldn't. But that's why YouTube's so amazing and podcasts are so amazing because it
Yeah,
allows you to actually watch and listen to the things you want to listen to.
yeah, big time. Actually, that's what I'd say. I watch more YouTube than anything else. You know,
Same, same.
um, everything I like is on there, and the quality is so
Staggering,
so
isn't it?
so good.
Yeah.
Um, that there's yeah, I could go home this evening and there'll be content from yeah favorite like music channels or motorcycle channels or whatever it is. There'll probably be 3 or 4 videos that I could sit down and watch if I
And
wanted to.
do you know what's
All of a
funny,
great
John?
quality.
Yeah, they are. And do you know what's really funny is about 5 years ago, I remember having a conversation at work with a guy whose kid, I don't know, was 12 or 13 or something. And he was saying that all his kid does is watches YouTube.
Yeah, same.
And
Well, he does. My Just to clarify, my child does go outside the house. He doesn't just
no,
sit in the house
but
and
when they are consuming, they
it's
his
the
kid,
go-to.
yeah, it was the go-to.
Yeah,
And he was saying to me then, he's like, oh, when that generation gets older, then obviously it will drag YouTube with it. And I think about it a lot, but now I don't think that's what's happened. I think YouTube has actually got to the stage where it's dragging me and you in, who are in our sort of towards our 40s, and pulling us into that ecosystem.
yeah,
And it's not just our kids that are watching it now. And the reason it is because there's stuff that you want to watch, there's stuff that your kids want to watch, stuff that my kids want to watch, stuff that I want to
yeah,
watch. There's all four things are all totally different, but we can
yeah,
all consume them at the same time whenever we want.
yeah,
And as you said, the quality is incredible these days.
yeah. It's an amazing development, isn't it? Because
Mm,
when YouTube first started emerging properly, it was a place that you would go to watch, I don't know, someone might upload a clip from a gig or like
yeah,
a cat falling in a bin or,
lot of cat videos.
stuff like that. Just like silly stuff that people could upload to the internet.
Yes.
Whereas it's amazing, isn't it, how it's developed from that to TV,
Oh, do you
basically.
remember? I mean, I'm sure you do. You'll remember when Google bought it for
Yeah,
$1.9 billion,
yeah,
and there was uproar in the press about what a crazy decision.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. It's
not a bad investment, I don't think.
it's pretty good going, isn't it? It's pretty good
Yeah.
going. But yeah, I can't remember how we got to this.
I don't know. I'm looking at my questions, thinking we've gone totally off track.
Do you ever just to go? Can we go really off track with
Go.
just? Do you ever look at YouTube videos or YouTube content and channels and try and understand why something is successful? So
Yes.
that why is Mr. Beast that big compared to someone who's uploaded something and it's maybe got 100 views? That's a similar
Um,
piece of content. Do you see what I mean?
yeah,
Like
I
I
do.
always I find that really fascinating.
I do actually a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm going on this YouTube journey myself at the moment, so even more so probably. I don't look at the Mr. Beasts, and I'll tell you why. I think what he does is great, and I think this is not a criticism at all, but I think he's suddenly found himself in the zeitgeist and he's riding this wave of FOMO almost. That it's like everyone's talking about him, and therefore people are just watching and watching and watching. That's
Yeah,
not to say he doesn't put out good content, because he does. But where I get really interested and in the weeds is when I look at other content creators and I think, how on earth have you got 500,000 subscribers? Or how on earth have you dragged? So, for instance, there's a few. There's this guy called Half Asleep Chris, who is this youngish guy who makes Lego stuff, and the quality of his output is incredible. And he has got 2 million, I think, 2.5 million subscribers. His videos regularly get. I mean, this one's 5 million, 2 million, 2 million,
that's
and it's just this
insane, isn't it?
ordinary lad. The content he puts out is great. Yet until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'd never heard of him. but he's got 2.5 million subscribers. He can put out a video that gets more views than the BBC on a Saturday night, and I'd never heard of him.
It's
There's another guy
mental.
we watch called Just Alex, who, again, you look at him, he's a very ordinary guy. He's got 350,000 subscribers, but so talk about going down rabbit holes. Me and my watched an hour and a half long video of his from start to finish about beekeeping, and I've got absolutely zero interest in beekeeping. I've never thought about it. And I remember
Wow.
watching that video and I was thinking, how has he done that? Because he's not like,
That
okay,
is
I'll get in the
clever,
weeds
isn't
now.
it?
It is clever because you look at,
Yeah.
I mean, I consumed a lot of Mr. Beast interviews because, you know, he's allegedly the greatest, and therefore, if you want to learn how to go on YouTube, you should see what he does. But a lot of his advice is make great videos, and it's like, oh, you know, you've got to do the cuts, you've got to do the retention, you've got to, you know, it's got to be bang, 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 bang. But there's a lot of people out there who are making great content who don't do that.
Yeah.
And there's this chasm of people where you think, right, do I want the hundreds of millions of subscribers and the hundreds of millions of views that Mr. Beast gets? I mean, at top level, yeah, probably, but I'd also be very happy with 100,000 subscribers and, I don't know, 100,000 views on
Yeah.
each video.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? And then someone will upload a video taking a Kinder egg out the packet, and it will get like 2 million views. You're like, how? What? It's crazy. But then, should we get back to podcasting?
Well, let me just finish my one last point I was
Okay.
going to make on that. The funny thing is, so I put out 28 videos in a row now, 29 videos in a row or something.
Okay. Yeah.
The funny thing is, you never know which is going to do well, which isn't. And there's ones I put out, and I've said to people, I was like, I think this is going to one. This is going to catch a bit of virality. It's going to go. It got like 20 views, and my numbers are like small, so don't. The data analysis is pretty. There's not statistical significance there anyway. But then I put out one about we went to Portugal recently, and we
Yeah.
went up. Do you know what a funicular is? It's those trains
Yeah.
that go.
Yeah.
And we went on a funicular, and I didn't speak in the video once, and it went like, I mean, it went to my number one video in 8 hours.
Wow.
I don't know if you know that one. I was like, it was a bit of a lazy one. It was one of those ones I was editing late at night. I was like, oh Christ, just get something out almost. So yeah,
It's weird that.
you never know.
It's weird, isn't it? But like we're
Same on
the whole.
podcasting, right? With you were saying about the flight guy.
Yeah, that if you look at that one though, I mean that's kind of almost.
Did you think it was going to be a banger?
I knew it was good, but I guess it's a natural fit, isn't it? Like he's got a massive YouTube audience, and you got a thumbnail of me and him sat in front of a tiger moth, like an old aircraft in a aircraft hangar. If people see it, they're going to want to watch it.
Yeah.
And again,
yeah,
it just tapped into his audience. But historically, we have just not put any real concerted effort into YouTube or really video to any great degree. So that's now the big moving forwards. That's
okay.
the big
So let's get back to the questions then. So what are your goals with marketing freaks?
Yeah. I don't think any like specific number-based goals, but I just want to continue seeing it to grow, and I want to continue doing more interesting stuff with it. So that ultimately that's the goal. I want to make it continuously get better. So a big thing at the moment is video. Like, can we get a much higher standard of video that gains more traction on either YouTube or other platforms like LinkedIn? Because I just feel like we're not there yet on the video. I want to get bigger and better guests, definitely. So how do we go about doing that?
Can I interrupt you quickly?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at your channel now, and there's you mentioned it about the two things. You've got the interviews on one side, and you've got the um, the digital marketing stuff on the other. It seems to me that they're kind of two different channels.
Yeah, it's probably that. I mean, that is a good point. Like, are we too loose with it? Part of the plans at the moment is that we're going through a bit of a separation exercise with it anyway, because it's always been a piece of content that we've produced as an agency.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. Like the agency stuff makes sense, right? It's like, oh, how to view landing page reports. That's interesting for me because that's what I want to do. And you're in a digital agency, and there's that correlation, and assuming to a certain degree, this is lead gen for you, right? Your brand awareness.
Yeah.
And then I look at the Noel Phillips and the Robbie Knoxes, and which I'm sure are great content, but don't really fit in. Like, is there room for the Jon Quinton show?
No one would want that.
Why
The
not?
So soon enough there will be a separate. I can't put a date on it because we haven't got it yet, but there will be a separate Marketing Freaks channel, a separate Marketing Freaks social, like separate to the agency business. So that is something, that is a route that we're going down, definitely. But I don't. It's weird. Like, there's no like specific goals in terms of numbers, but I'd like it to have the credibility where we're getting bigger and better guests and doing more interesting stuff. At events or whatever it is. But
But
just
where's the
still,
where's the digital marketing angle on that though? Like for instance, Robbie Knox. You ring up Robbie Knox, go, "Hey Robbie, do you want to come on my podcast?" And he
yeah.
goes, "Yeah." What's it about? You're like, digital marketing. And hopefully Robbie goes, "Oh well, yeah, that's kind of what I do with YouTube, but not necessarily."
Well, the digital marketing element on that one was how do you make good video,
Okay.
and should people even entertain it as a channel? And because everyone talks about video being the thing that they should do, or every business feels like they should do video.
Yeah.
Why? And how?
Bandwagon that's rolling on by that everyone wants to be on.
Yeah, but like, there's no. It's a good thing to sit back and look at, well, why do we need video,
Yes.
and not just the best creative or the best photography or the best, something else. Not saying video is bad by any stretch, but yeah, the digital marketing aspect of that was, well, if a business decides they should do video,
Hmm.
what do they do from there?
Okay.
So it's kind of talking to him about his YouTube channel, but also just video in general, because that's an area that he understands. So there's always an element of it. Or if we're talking to a business founder, um, it's the right. How do you plan marketing into your organization? What does the marketing function look like? And it's always interesting to get the perspective of someone who's built a successful business. And
How often do they say something video related or YouTube related, or even podcast related? I guess.
um, I'd say fairly minimally, because for them it's about the objectives and it's about the outcomes and the
Yeah.
how it helps to build their business. The tactics are less important.
Hmm.
But again, if this is why interviewing lots of different people is great, because everyone sees things through a slightly different lens.
Yes.
And some business founders you speak to, they do really like their paid media, and they like getting into the weeds a little bit on certain channels, and it's something they're really into. And others are very much about the higher kind of top level. Okay, if I spend this, what do I get back, and what's the
Yeah.
right mix, and how does my brand look?
Hmm.
So everyone's different, and I think that's a really interesting thing to explore. And the idea of having these guests on is that the more perspectives you put out there, the more help
True.
you can offer people, because perspectives are really interesting and useful to have. Like, if you think about learning, learning digital marketing, right? You can go to Google and study Google Ads, and you can study SEO, and you can study various marketing channels. But
Yeah.
and that's all very important. Like, you have to know what you're doing. But once you've done that, it's the stories and the perspectives of people that have been there and done it that I find really useful. So,
Yeah.
what do you do if things go wrong? What if it's not quite working for you? Or, people who've kind of gone through different cycles with it. The perspectives, I think, are massively important and useful.
No, I totally agree, and that's why I'm a huge lover of podcasts, because it allows you to basically earwig a chat between two people that
Yeah,
you'd never have access to any other time.
yeah, exactly that,
Yeah.
exactly that, exactly that. Yeah,
Okay. So I'm curious to answer this question, because I mean, obviously, you work in digital marketing and paid media, and I guess analysis is quite an important part of your day job, as it were. But do
yep.
you do much analysis on what's worked, what's not worked with your podcast?
I think from a broad level, yes.
Okay.
First off, like, podcast analytics are fairly awful.
Yeah.
It's definitely a frustration, because like, we'll get days when we got a big spike. Log in, take a look. Right, big spike yesterday. We didn't release anything, didn't share anything. So something somewhere has happened to cause a load of new people to find
Yeah.
a particular episode, and it's spiked.
But you got
Trying to
no idea what it
understand,
is.
yeah, it's really, really difficult to drill down to, well, did someone share it? Did we suddenly get into like the top 10 on Apple Podcasts and then fall back out again? What happened? It's really difficult to understand.
Yeah.
We can definitely, so I guess the analytical approach to it really is looking at, over time, looking at a broad set of episodes, and okay, well, what seemed to resonate better and what seemed to generate the most traction? Um, what are we putting out on social that resonates best?
Yeah.
What are we doing there that's kind of increasing engagement? What do we do more of? What do we do less of? But it's quite a
I'd like to
broad
go down that
overview.
rabbit hole, if you don't mind, because
Sure.
one of the reasons I wanted to get you on is you are one of the few people I see doing paid stuff behind your podcast,
Okay.
retargeting, social ads.
Sorry if you've been bombarded,
No,
Chris.
no, it's good. And the reason I wanted to bring it up, because not a lot of people do that. And
Yep.
further to what we were saying earlier about people taking stuff away,
Yep.
I'd like to know a bit more. I mean, if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. But
No, we can talk about it.
I'd like to know a bit more about your theory, strategy, ideas, because
Yep.
I think more people should be doing it, and I wondered why people don't do it. So when I
Yep.
saw that you guys were doing it, I thought, right, let's get John on and chat to him about this.
Okay, cool. So we don't. So from a paid marketing perspective, we run a bit of activity on Meta, so Facebook and Instagram.
Hmm.
It's kind of always on type activity. We don't spend a massive amount of money on it. The podcast doesn't earn anything, so we don't spend a huge amount of money on those ads.
Yeah.
It's probably in the region of 600 a month, maybe ish. So
Okay.
it's not a big. It's certainly not a big spend. And what it does is it just brings in like a steady flow of new downloads and new people and new subscribers and new followers on Spotify, and it really does just keep it ticking and moving forwards from a numbers point of view. It's really hard to understand again, just on that analytics point,
That was going to be
how,
my next question.
yeah, because in an ideal world, I'd set up ad on Instagram or Facebook or wherever, and I would send that traffic straight to Spotify to subscribe, right? But I can't, because I can't track that activity, because I can't put a pixel onto Spotify.
Yeah.
So what we do is we go via a landing page, and we track the exit clicks to Spotify as an indication of, are we getting the right people? Because just to click on the ad could be anyone, but if they click the ad, gone to the landing page, exited the landing page off to Spotify, they're probably the right kind of person. So that's the conversion event that we optimize for. If you look in the platform at the numbers, it's like, this doesn't look good at all, because the tracking, just something about it, that with that many steps in the process,
Friction.
it just yeah.
Yeah.
But if you look at the numbers on Buzzsprout, which is the hosting service we use, if you look at follower count on Spotify and that type of stuff, you can just see when you're running ads for, let's say, a 30-day period versus when you're not, it's the troughs are much higher. So if we're not running ads and we haven't released anything that day, the numbers are almost nothing. If we're running ads, then the numbers are much higher on those lower days, because new people are coming in constantly. The follower count on Spotify is growing, and so the strategy really is just to keep a little bit of oil going through the cogs, if you know what I mean. There's so much more we could do on creative. There's loads more we could do to kind of make that work harder. And again, that's kind of in the plan. We're re-looking at everything there, but currently it's a case of trying to get a bit of new life into it, and new subscribers and new followers and new listeners on a constant basis. And this is where the I guess, like, the growth in podcast numbers come from, I think, is just growing those follower numbers. Because if you just get someone to come and listen and then they go, chances are they probably won't come back, or it's hard to get them back. But if they come and they subscribe, if they come and they follow, you're building up an audience. So every time you release an episode, that there's always like a base level, isn't there?
Yeah.
That just slowly starts to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow.
Okay.
So that's the theory. But it's a really unsophisticated.
But that drives you crazy with your paid media hat on, doesn't it?
It doesn't, but it just works.
Yeah.
At the moment, it just works.
So do you think on the whole, more podcasters should be doing a bit of paid spend to try and boost their numbers?
I mean, I would always recommend it, particularly for podcasting, because it's so hard to get initial traction organically.
Yeah.
That paying to promote it makes sense. But then I guess we're in a unique-ish position in that, in theory, it's a marketing investment from the agency business, right?
Yeah.
So we're investing in the content, and therefore we have the resource available to invest in its promotion. Whereas if you were growing a podcast from scratch just as a individual, having the resource available to do that might be slightly harder.
When it comes to targeting, and I'm thinking particularly, I guess you have this wide base, right? Generic marketing to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And then when you have someone like Robbie Knox come on, I imagine there are a lot of people who enjoy Robbie Knox's content who got nothing to do with marketing.
Yeah.
So would you then specifically push people towards like Robbie Knox's lookalike audience, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, possibly. Or like, we dabbled with YouTube advertising before.
Okay.
So like the Noel Phillips one, I think, is quite a good example. So for those people who are listening who don't know about YouTube advertising, there's a number of different ad formats, and there's a number of different ways to target your ads on YouTube.
Okay.
So with the Noel Phillips one, one of the options you can do. So you've got the pre-roll stuff that everyone gets annoyed by, um, but you can also do paid for suggested videos. In the right
Okay.
hand side.
Yeah.
So what we did was we just ran a really simple ad, or ran that video as a promoted. Forgot the terminology now, but a suggested video, paid to get it into that recommended box for
Okay.
people who have an interest in Noel Phillips's channel. So the idea being, his audience are on there looking at his videos,
Yeah.
and then in the sidebar there's a relatively interesting looking thumbnail with an interview.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And I think that kicked it off nicely, and then kind of went organically from there. So sometimes they're quite tactical, other times it's really just having that always on flow of people who are interested in marketing, business, and consume podcasts as a secondary tier.
Yeah.
And I don't, well, Meta anyway. It's the days of being really precise are kind of long and gone. Really,
Yeah.
it's about playing the game, and broader targeting certainly tends to work better.
Okay.
But yeah,
That's interesting, and that is good takeaways for. I'm glad I asked that question. What's the best way to stand out from a crowd when you're starting a podcast?
I think it's interesting actually, because you look back and you go, like, do we really stand out?
No, we're just another interview podcast like everyone else.
Yeah, probably in some regards. So,
I'm talking
like,
about myself there, not you, by the way.
no. I would say it's very hard to stand out in a world where everyone's doing the same thing, isn't it?
Mm,
I think you probably got to really look for some form of unique or interesting angle.
yeah.
I think definitely. Also, but that is balanced against finding a topic that you can talk about regularly enough to keep going
Yes.
and not just run out of ideas on. I think for us, the way we try and stand out is, again, it's guests and having interesting people on,
Yeah.
and hoping that that will always be of interest to people, because it's always interesting listening to interesting people. So that's the general idea there. But yeah, I think looking back at, it's looking for some form of concept or unique angle, I think.
Okay. I'm kind of going to segue on to the next question a bit about. I kind of want to know what you think is tough about podcasting, whether you've ever thought, you know, enough is enough. And I guess my reason behind that is a sort of a follow on to the last question around how competitive podcasting is. So
Yeah.
to go back to you said about standing out and having that concept. I always have this theory about you're also competing with time, because most podcasts are a solid amount of time. Diary of a
Yeah.
CEO, for example, you mentioned, you know, it's not, or Rogan or any of those people, it's not a rare thing that their podcast will be 2 hours long.
Which is a massive amount of time to ask someone to invest
It's
in
huge.
listening to your content. Um, so our episodes are typically 30 minutes tops.
Yeah.
Reason for that is that I don't know. I think you can. There's no disrespect to episodes that are longer. Like, we've been talking for an hour,
Mm.
which is fine. Like, and it's absolutely fine to do longer content. But for me, I think I would rather have a 20-minute, properly snappy, interesting, to the point conversation
Yeah.
than a 2 hours of just chit chat with 10 minutes of gold. That
Yeah. See,
that's my opinion
yeah, and I'm the other way. I
on it.
actually prefer the longer form. However, I will caveat that really heavily with the fact that I used to, um, consume a lot of my podcasts when I was commuting,
Yeah,
and whether that was going in and out of London, or I used to work um, one of the offices I worked in was in Peterborough, so it was like an hour and a bit drive up. And I used to love it. That was what consuming podcasts for me was. And I used to do it
Yeah.
every day. But now I work from home and I don't commute anymore.
Yeah.
So therefore my podcast listening behavior has totally changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't listen to I listen to a fraction of what I used to.
Yeah. I
And
think
it's hard because
it's actually a very good point to make, really, isn't it? That was a big
the
COVID and
commuter
work from
time, right?
big step change in consumption behavior. Because you can't really listen to a podcast. Well, I can't anyway. I find it really hard to listen to a podcast when I'm working on something
Yes.
because I'm either listening to that conversation or I'm doing I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So drives. I quite like sitting at home in the evening and listening to a podcast.
Do you?
Yeah. The can of lager.
See, I've never tried that. I kind of feel like I'd probably be asleep within about 10 minutes.
Yeah, that is a risk. But to do it a little bit when it's like on holiday. We were away for a couple of weeks, and a few evenings, like everyone would go to bed a bit early, and I'd just sit there and listen to something.
Okay.
It's quite nice. It's quite
It
nice.
is. It is because you're like I said earlier, you're in that conversation, and it's like your own personal theatre of listening to two people that you wouldn't normally get a chance to.
Yeah,
It's an
and
amazing medium, really.
yeah, and it's nice to consume stuff without looking at a screen sometimes, and
Yeah.
just sitting there and listening to something, and yeah, I do like it. But it's totally different to commuting for an hour in the morning, an hour coming home, and
Yeah.
I think there's a massive impact, isn't it, on podcast numbers?
I imagine so. Going back to the podcast, what is something you struggle with it? What do you find tough? Have you ever thought about packing it in?
Yeah, I think just like the time investment in keeping it going, and we've
Mm.
gone from, I think, initially it was just properly sporadic in terms of release schedules. Last year, I think we pretty much did one a week every week.
Okay.
I think, and that got, when you're doing audio and even a little bit of video, just for kind of snippets and clips, it's a really, really hard thing to keep to.
Yes.
It really, when you got a job on top of
Yeah.
it, it's
And a family.
really tough, and a family, and life.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Now we're on one every 2 weeks, and then we're looking at a couple of potentially doing some smaller bits in between. But the benefit we've found from that is it does impact the numbers a bit because you tend to get nice spikes on release days, don't you?
Yeah.
But we get way more out of each episode. So what we were finding with doing one every week, we're just about keeping on top of producing enough content to do it.
Yeah.
So by the time it went out, we'd probably share it once, on every platform we could, and then it'd be done and on to the next one. And you're like, well, that feels like
That's what I
such
was saying earlier. It's bizarre, isn't it? And then you forget about it. You put all this effort in. It's like, unless unless it really catches a little bit of a wave, it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. But then moving to once every 2 weeks means we're getting way more out of each episode. So we've got time to put a few different snippets and clips up. Got time to do like a little teaser, time to do a transcript and a decent blog post around it. And it feels like we're getting the most bang for our time buck out of it that way. So yeah, that's... I'd say the hardest thing is probably the time investment. It's much easier now because we've got a few more people kind of involved, but yeah, it's hard. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time and effort, and you have to keep going.
Is it worth it?
I don't know, probably not. But then to find what is worth it, and commercially, we get a lot of content from it, so that's good.
Have you ever had a client come to you who's come to you solely
Yeah,
from the back of your? Have you?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We have, and we also get a lot of people during the sales process who have listened to episodes and kind of have interacted with it, which means when we go to meet them, they feel like they already know us a little bit,
Mm. I think
which is
people. I
really
think
good.
people underestimate the power of that.
It's strong.
Yeah.
Get clients who
There's a
really like
trust
it,
element, right?
definitely.
Yeah.
And if part of picking an agency partner is picking people, it's people buying people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, so you kind of being able to sit and listen to a potential partner talk about how they view the world when it comes to working with their clients is a really good natural insight into how they work.
Yeah.
Far more than you get from a slide in a presentation. Ways of
Yeah.
working. Bullet
Yeah.
point 1, 2, 3, 4.
The same
Fine.
BS
That's
that every agency says.
Yeah. We want to
Yeah.
be an extension of your team. All of that, which everyone says, and we believe that because we do want to be an extension of someone's team, but you'll get way more information and insight as to how a bunch of people think and operate and
Yeah.
what they're like as people if you can sit and listen to a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like
Agreed.
a little sight glass into their world. And, I think that is really, really important. Um, so, yeah, back to the kind of how do you measure it? It's that, well, you can look at numbers and you can look at interactions on social and you can look at all of that stuff. But the biggest stuff, though, the biggest thing is it's these softer elements to it that I think are really powerful. But you can't. How do you quantify that? We've had 10 people mention the podcast in the sales meeting in the last 6 months. So we've had. You can't measure it. There's no
No.
quantifiable measure of it, but you know that people are interacting with it, and it's a positive thing.
Do you enjoy it? Would you do it if there was no commercial reason?
Yeah, I love it.
Well, see, there you go. Right. That's what I think you said that earlier as well. It's
I
that's.
really thoroughly enjoy it. You know,
Mm.
um, I love. I like the production side. I love having chats with different people. I think that's just what a
Mm.
great way to meet people.
Uh, John, I
Like,
100% agree. Like I've said this on previous episodes. I love the fact that I now got to talk to you for an hour and a bit. And if you and I
yeah,
had met at some networking event or introduced at a wedding or whatever, they'd be like, "Oh, John, this is Chris. John does this. John," and you'd be like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And that'd be
that'd
it.
be it. Yeah,
There'd be no
yeah,
real depth in the conversation.
yeah. Like I've met so many people and made so many friends doing this that
Yeah,
it's that is
same.
brilliant. That is
Yeah,
I love that aspect of it. I love the challenge of looking at it and go like we're talk loads about video, didn't we? But I love that challenge of how do right. I'm not happy with how this looks. It doesn't look good enough.
yeah.
What are we going to do about it, and how do we make it look better? That's I love that. I love that
Mm,
kind of creative challenge. Um, yeah, I do enjoy it, and I think you have to because, um,
too easy to
yeah.
give up otherwise, isn't it?
Why else? Why? Yeah, I don't know why you do it otherwise,
Yeah.
unless you had a big audience already, and there was a clear reason. But you do have to, I think, really enjoy the format and love the format and enjoy the challenge of doing it.
I always look at it like the gym. When you don't want to
Yeah,
go to the gym and you wake up and you go, oh, I can't be bothered to do that workout, and
yeah,
then you go and do it, and then afterwards you think, oh, I'm really glad I did that. And I feel there's been I mean, I'm on episode. I don't even know what episode I'm on. 60 some, 70 some, I don't know. And there's been plenty where I thought, oh, I really can't be bothered. Is it too late to send them an email saying the
yeah,
kid's sick or I've been whatever? But every time, and I never do, and I always do it, and I'm like, oh, I enjoyed that. I
yeah.
really enjoyed that.
Definitely, there are. Um, there are some that I regret. I actually had that vibe and regret doing a little bit.
Really.
Like, yeah. So, guests that I've got on that have that have pitched to be on the podcast, and I've agreed because I've got a gap in the schedule and I need to get something out.
Oh, I've got a couple of those coming up. You make me worry. Go on.
But I didn't pitch to be honest, did I?
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
But yeah,
but I'm
there
noticing
are
it
a
more and
few.
more. I'm getting a lot of emails from, I guess there were I don't know, VAs. I think they are, not agencies.
Yeah, that's the one.
Would you like to speak to this client? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no, not really.
No.
But there's I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 episodes that we've done with that aspect.
Did you put them live?
Yeah, they're live, and they're all right, but
they're just different, aren't they? There's a different agenda. There's a different.
Yeah, and I don't know, if I'm interviewing someone, I have to be interested in them. I have to be, and I have to find them interesting, and I have to really want to talk to them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just pretty rubbish, and that's definitely something I've learned. And when you get a guest on and they are genuinely interesting and like have a genuine backstory to them, it's like so easy. It's so easy. You could just talk for hours if you wanted to.
Yeah, well, that's the problem I have is we're now an hour and 10 in, and it's gone like that.
Yeah,
and I could probably chat to you for 4 hours, and it wouldn't even bother me. But then you've got to kind of draw the line somewhere, right? People have got jobs to do. But
yeah, but it's like yeah, just getting people on for the sake of filling up a schedule. It's the balance, isn't it? Between okay, if you've decided and committed to putting something out every week or every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever it is.
Yeah.
As a really, I think, as a content creator, there's a really delicate balance to strike between, well, I've committed to this thing, so I'm gonna do it, and filling that schedule with junk just because you've got to do your schedule. Which comes into having a pipeline of ideas and a pipeline of potential guests, and having all that kind of planned as far in advance as possible, so that doesn't happen. But yeah, as soon as you do something just because you've got a gap in your schedule and you've got to fill it, guarantee it'll be awful.
It's funny. I'm laughing because I've only done it once, and it is so true what happened. And this person came on, and every question. So obviously I got the 10-question format, and every question was blah 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 blah. Yeah, but my company XYZ because this. My company do this. My company do that. And I thought, oh my god, this is just horrendous.
This is like,
it's horrendous. Yeah. And I ended up ringing up a mate of mine, and I backed myself into a corner because I'd left it too late. And then it was one of those ones where it was supposed to be going out the next Tuesday, and it was Thursday afternoon. I was like, oh my god, like. I ended up ringing my mate. I said, you've got to help me out here. I said, I need you to come on the podcast. And he didn't want to do it. And he said to me before, he's quite shy. He's like, I don't want to do it. I was like, I need you. Because I haven't got time to go and find someone else and try and someone I don't know and go, oh, can you do a podcast tomorrow? But
yeah,
thankfully they did, and it worked.
It's a bad place to be, isn't it? But yeah, I think it's just yeah.
All right, let's move on. You're obviously a fan of podcasting. If you could shadow any podcaster for the day, who would it be and why?
Oh, do you know what? It'd be Justin Hawkins.
Would it?
If we can call him a podcast, yeah, we'll call him a podcaster because massively interesting. I think it'd be a huge amount of fun. Yeah, I think that would just be amazing.
So do they still make music? I don't know. I'm not a massive.
Yeah, they're still touring. Yeah,
are they?
Yeah, they're still touring and they're still making an income from it.
Have you seen them live?
Years ago. Where was it? Reading, I think. Is it Reading? Yeah, Reading. Yeah, donkeys is when they were, when they'd just gone really big.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I think probably someone like that. And again, it probably wouldn't be just to follow them around and see how they produce a podcast. It'd be because they're really
Just a big
interesting and
fanboy.
like, yeah, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'd say Justin Hawkins because I'm listening to his stuff a lot at the moment.
I'm gonna check him out. If someone came up to you and said, "John, I really want to start a podcast," what would you tell them?
Many people ask me this question, aka two. Um,
At least you get two people asking you rather than just putting on LinkedIn going, I often get asked and no one asks you
yeah,
because you thought of a content idea and you need a way to string it out.
yeah. They probably. What do we normally talk about when people ask? When the one person or two people have asked me that question, like why,
Hmm.
and could there, like, based on what they want to get out of it, might there actually be better formats and things to do?
Yeah.
And often there are.
Do you
Um,
think there's room? I mean, how am I going to phrase this question? Would you agree with the following statement? It was easier to start a podcast 5 years ago than it is now.
Probably would have been because there was less competition and there was still a novelty factor around them. There's always going to be room though, because you look at YouTube,
Mm.
there's still new stuff cropping up all the time.
But is YouTube
Um,
different though? That's kind of what I'm trying to work out in my head. I think.
oh, yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Um, yeah, I think there's always room for new, fresh content. You know, if
I
that's
mean, saying
stopped,
that,
then
do you someone sent me something last week about Gary Lineker and Alan Shearer and Mika Richards started a new podcast 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you're into football or not. And I think must have been Lineker, I guess, tweeted something that they'd hit 100,000 downloads in their first week.
yeah,
And I guess just thinking about that through, and I hadn't really thought about it before I asked the question, is to suddenly find 100,000 downloads out of nowhere. I mean, yes, they have an audience behind them, but the fact that they got 100,000 downloads should show that there is room, I guess.
yeah, exactly. Like if it's interesting enough, people will find it and people will listen to it. You know, and
Mm,
it's not about you're yeah back to that competition point. You're competing for that half an hour or hour of someone's time, and you have to have a better reason for them to listen to you than somebody else. You know, and that's the goal. So yeah, I think there's always room. There's
okay.
always going to be room. I think the bar will get higher. But like you say, so many, come out and fizzle out
Yeah.
that if you part of it is just keep going, isn't it?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah, my theory on that is that people expectations are a bit out of sync and everyone thinks they're going to get 100 million subscribers and downloads and within 3 weeks. And I don't know why people think. I guess the same thing happens on YouTube, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But you just gotta, yeah. Again, like if you're purely after numbers and visibility,
Yeah.
it's probably better things to do. You know, um,
Or at least a different approach, as in not relying solely on organic and actually, like you guys are doing, putting paid money behind it and
yep,
actually making it almost like a business, like a
yep,
content creation business, as
yeah,
opposed to.
yep,
Hmm,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, loads of ways to think about it. Um,
hmm.
I may have to. I'm getting Slack messages.
Sorry. Okay, John. Very last question then, and it could be a quick
Of
one.
course. Yeah. Sorry
If
to.
it, no, 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 it's my fault. If we spoke again in 12 months and you
Yeah.
said to me, Chris, it's been a really successful year, what would have
Yep.
happened?
I think video numbers.
Is that
Like
the
if we,
focus?
yeah, if we were sat here in 12 months' time, and the like the audio aspect was kind of just keep jiggling, getting bigger, slowly getting bigger, 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 bigger.
Yeah.
But we've got some really good traction behind video and a production that I was really proud of, I'd be like, I'm well happy with that.
Okay.
That's I think for me what it would be.
Good answer. Okay, Jon Quinton, a very big thank you from me for joining me today. If people want to come and say hi, check out your podcast, where should I be directing them to in the show notes?
Yeah, so if you can't find me on LinkedIn, Jon Quinton, always on there. So drop me a note. Always good to say hello. Instagram, we're there as Overdrive Digital.
Okay.
They're probably the main two things. Yeah.
Okay, I will link to them both in the show notes.
Oh yeah,
Jon, thank
obviously
you.
the podcast on Spotify.
Oh well, obviously I will link to that, and that should be your first port of call for subscribing to. But Jon, I know you're in a rush, so I will thank you, and I will link to all those stuff below. Go say hi to Jon, and thank you for your time this morning, sir.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.